Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Deal Scout. Josh here. On today's show, we're going to have a conversation about the anti-startup method. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Anton to the show. Welcome.
Hi, Josh. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. All right. So you and I are hanging out at a coffee shop or a bar or something, and someone comes up and they go, "Hey, who are you? What do you do?" How do you typically respond?
Sure. So well, I like to say I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. So I didn't start from some crazy business world or, high place, I guess. Grew up fairly middle class. Me and my wife started real estate investing about 6, 7 years ago. Been very successful with that. We built a portfolio of 40 rental units spread out across 4 states. So that's a big chunk of what we do nowadays. And then I'm also the founder of two real estate related software companies that have been very successful. The first one is DealCheck, which is one of the leading real estate analysis platforms for quickly evaluating and analyzing rental properties, flips, commercial buildings. And then our newer platform is called RentCast, and that's more focused on the data, rental market analysis, rental property analysis, and we basically give the tools for investors and property managers to grow, track, and optimize their rental portfolios. So I guess I stay pretty busy if I had to summarize that.
Yeah. So before going any further, man, thank you for your service. We salute all, frontline workers, military, police. We've got, we invest in them, and we're thankful for your service there.
Thank you.
So what did you do in the Navy? Are you allowed to talk about it here?
Yeah, I was enlisted actually, so I wasn't like officer rank. I was, I guess, the grunt level, and I worked on electronics. For anybody who served, my rate was FC, which is fire controlman. So we maintained, fixed kind of electronics equipment.
Got it. Now, when you were in the military, what inspired you to get into the military? Let's go through some of your story, and I'm gonna just ask you a bunch of questions about how the decisions
Sure.
and what brought you to where you are.
Well, the military for me was kind of, I was in a different time in my life. I was young, right after high school. Didn't have a lot of direction as far as what I wanted to do. So I don't want to say it was kind of a rash decision, but it was kind of somewhat spur of the moment. I thought, hey, I looked into my options. Thought the military could give me some structure, maybe learn a little bit, travel the world because it's the U.S. Navy, so you're on board a ship. So wouldn't say that a whole lot of thought went into it, to be honest. But I have no regrets. I did 6 years active duty. Went all over Southeast Asia, mostly Japan, met a lot of great folks, and kind of really grew as a person. It didn't end up being for me. I have a lot of friends and great people I know who stay 20, 30 years. They love it. I kind of realized that, hey, this is probably not exactly what I wanted to do, but at least it showed me that part. So I did a lot of growing up in the Navy, that's for sure.
So when you were in the military, like, is that when you first started learning about investing? Because, you went kind of straight out of high school. Like,
Right.
Did you learn about investing in the military or after?
Yeah. And it kind of, when I started getting that paycheck, we kind of had a 401k through the military setup. So I started dealing with money more or less for the first time in my life. And that's when I kind of started basically a self-education program that I still continue to this day, which for me really involves reading books. I'm a big book reader. So I started reading your basic personal finance books, learn about budgeting and saving money and investing specifically. And U.S. Navy is kind of like a tough, it's a tough job. You're working a lot. I also started developing this notion that, hey, I probably don't want to work until I'm 50 or 60, especially at this pace. I was getting a little turned off, even though I just started working. So, and investing really seemed like something I knew for sure I needed to do. It was my way to, instead of just spend all the money or saving in some low interest rate environment, it was to grow my money exponentially and to allow me to basically retire early and quit working, because at that time I really didn't enjoy kind of the daily working too much.
So let's just say, Anton, let's just say you for some reason you bought the lotto. Do you play lottery? Like the
No, I'm not a big gambler, no.
okay. Well, let's just say you found the winning lottery ticket, 100 million bucks. You and your family never need to work again, and probably your kids, right? Let's just be real.
Right.
Like, what would you do with your time? Because you're working towards this idea of retirement. You're a young guy, no gray in the beard yet. Like,
Yeah.
what would you do with your time?
Well, to be honest, I don't give that question a lot of thought either. I know it's like a big one. Everybody asks me, especially now in my circle of friends and family, because I work so much. Like, hey, when you stop working, what the hell are you gonna do? And I think I'll probably find some hobbies. I really enjoy traveling, kind of like your working out, physical activities, hiking, all that stuff. So I'll probably end up filling about half of my time with something like that. But to be fair, I'll probably would do at least something productive, even if I had $100 million right now. Be that work on a nonprofit or some, kind of. I'm big into software now, obviously, with my deal check and rentcast company. So it might be a project that I'm passionate about, that I have a few kind of written down just on the back burner that I don't pursue because maybe there's not a lot of money in them or take a lot of time. But I think the key is, to have the freedom to do what you want to do, or not do anything at all. And I think that's always been my biggest motivator. When you're working in the Navy or just a civilian job, that's kind of a huge portion of
Mhm.
your life. You spend a lot of time at work, and you have to keep working because you need the money to sustain yourself, your family. And I very early on in my life got on the idea that I have to separate my time and kind of the money I earn through investing or through businesses, and put myself in a position where I can make passive income, passive money, no matter really what I do. I'm a productive guy. I like to be productive, so I'll probably keep being productive. But the biggest takeaway, my always biggest dream, was that I don't have to be. If I wake up and I just, I'd be like, you know what, Josh, let's go jet skiing or something like that. Let's just take the day off. There's nobody waiting for me. There's no boss that's gonna call me and say, where the hell are you? It's freedom, and it's really what financial freedom to me means. And I think it's one of the most important goals that any human being can really strive for in life.
Yeah. So in this, what kind of work did your parents do? Because did they set you up to be an investor, or because you said you went through this process of self education? Like, did they teach you this, or did this something that you had to learn on your own?
My parents, I'd say they were pretty good with money. That they actually passed pretty early on, unfortunately. Some 10 plus years ago, both my mom and my dad died. And actually, how I initially got into real estate was that they owned a condo in San Diego, where they lived at the time. And I basically inherited it when they passed while I was in the Navy, deployed overseas in Japan. And I had like no notion of what to do with real estate. I never owned a property. All of a sudden, I have this condo. Right. So that was actually, under these unfortunate circumstances, how I got into real estate investing specifically. And, I talked to a few folks, like some friends or mentors, if you would. I thought about selling it at the beginning because I wasn't even living there. It seemed like a hassle to manage it. But I ended up keeping it, finding a property manager that basically could rent it out, took care of all the details. And that became my first rental property that I didn't even buy. And I'm glad I did that, because that really kind of paved my way into real estate. Because at the beginning, I was looking more at stocks and bonds and kind of equities, more traditional investing. Real estate crossed my mind, but it just seemed a little bit too complicated, buying houses and managing them. But I was kind of forced into it. So became an accidental landlord, as I call it. And then that opened up my eyes to, like, hey, this is a great way to diversify your investments in addition to equities. And once me and my wife got out of the military, we moved back to California and started growing our rental portfolio. So, but no, I have a lot of respect for my parents. They immigrated from Russia. They kind of paved their own way, and I feel like they did very, very well for themselves. So there was a bit that I learned from them, but a lot of it also did come from self education. I'm big into just self development, self improvement, and like I said, I read a lot. I try to read a dozen plus, a couple dozen books a year. So it's I'm the kind of guy who, if I find a subject interesting, yeah, I'll look at the people, see what they're doing, but then I'll go and get like 3, 4 books on it and study it until I feel like I have a very good handle on it.
Yeah. What books are you reading right now?
Well,
I
I'll tell you. Yeah, I even wrote it down because I knew you were going to ask me. So, in conjunction with kind of my most recent developments, which is working on my anti-startups, as I call them, the deal check and rentcast companies. I read 2 really great books. One is called The $100 Startup by Chris Gullibow.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Chris, if I butchered that last name. And the other one is A Company of One by Paul Jarvis. And I didn't read these books like back before I started Deal Check and Rentcast, but I feel like when I read them, it kind of gave validation for how I managed those companies, how I grew them, which is completely like not how most people grow businesses and startups. We didn't do any venture capital, we didn't do high crazy marketing budgets and viral campaigns. It was very steady, kind of almost like a one, company of one that Paul Jarvis talks in this book, is like this notion that, run your business should be set up where one person or a very small group of people can run. It doesn't mean that that's all you're going to stay at, but it's just very efficient, automated. So those are probably the 2 recent books that I read that are the most memorable, and it really gave me that cool validation that, hey, there's other people doing exactly how I've been doing it, even though a lot of people thought I was crazy, or I thought a little bit that I was crazy, because you look at startup world, you see how these companies approach it, people raising money before they have a product, people growing by double, triple digits a month or a year, and I didn't do any of that. So for a while, and they were very successful, and I was happy where I was. But you have that notion in the back of your head, like, hey, am I doing this like completely wrong? Because sure is different than what other people are doing. But those books gave me a good validation on that.
Yeah. I read the $100 Startup. Have not read the other one yet.
Yeah, you'll
Well,
like it if you like the $100 Startup.
yeah, I really did. So it's called A Company of One.
Yeah, by Paul Jarvis with a J.
Oh, Jarvis. Yeah, I'll write that down. Um, so as a podcast host, like, so you've been on a bunch of podcast shows and you've been interviewed and you've done some really cool
Yeah.
things, built 2 successful, tech companies focused on real estate and real estate investing. You have 40 units between you and your wife. So, like as a podcast host, I try to ask questions, like that's a soft pitch, Anton, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
so you probably try to like plan out all the questions Josh may ask, right? So I'm going to throw a little curveball here in
All
this
right,
soft
let's do
pitch.
it.
All right. So you're overseas and you became an accidental landlord. Parents died, which first of all, I'm terribly sorry, man. I lost a parent, and it's that for me that was really tough on my mindset and what I was
Yeah.
going on. So you're in the military and parents pass away, you become an accidental landlord. Now you're on a ship somewhere, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
wherever you're at.
I literally was.
Yeah. What went through your mind? What went through your mind during that period in terms of this property, and how did your parents passing? I don't want to ask this insensitively, right? Insensitive. But how did that help solidify the route that you want to take for your future and your family?
Um, I think it's a great question. So in terms of the property, like I mentioned, back then I was pretty new in my investing career, I guess you can say. So I was familiar with all the personal finance stuff and budgeting, and I started my equity portfolio and mostly kind of index funds, some bonds and stocks. So I was familiar with investing. I was not familiar with real estate at all. I never owned property. It Obviously I was familiar with what real estate is. I knew people invested in it, but it wasn't on my radar at all. So I was kind of forced to start reading a lot, because again, that's what I like doing, and kind of weighing my choices. I wasn't there. I couldn't handle a lot of stuff. And my first thing that crossed my mind is I need to probably sell this property, because there's tax bills and insurance. I really had no clue, to be honest, like what
Mhm.
all I needed to do. I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to lose this property, or kind of like it go to to waste, because I know my parents worked hard for it. So I wanted to do it justice. And But again, I talked to a few people, I weighted my options, and I basically decided, you know what, I'm not going to do a rash decision. I found out about property management. I didn't know that there was companies that did this. So I found about property management. I contacted some folks I knew in California. They helped me get a referral to a local company, and they've been great. Thankfully, they kind of saved my butt, because they were able to come in and take care of take the property's possession over, clean it up, and then rent it out. And I had basically not much I needed to do at that point. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy how it turned out. And I don't know if I would have invested in real estate, following that, because that's kind of what I feel like set me on the path. Because fast forward, so I was in the Navy when that happened, and then I think about like 3 or 4 years still left in the Navy. And during that whole 3 or 4 years, I didn't do anything else with real estate. I didn't buy any additional property, but I had that little bit of income. It wasn't much. It was a property in California, so it's like the rent to price ratio here is not that great for cash flowing real estate. But I got that trickle of income from that property for all those years, and I think that's what really opened my eyes to like how good real estate can be, both as a wealth building vehicle but also as a passive investment. So
Yeah.
I don't know where I would have been. Maybe I would have came to real estate, but maybe it would have been later. So because this happened, I feel like it kind of gave me just mentally a jump start, and showed me what I can do. What's possible with real estate, and I have no regrets with our rental portfolio that we've built. It's been absolutely great, and we get about 12-15 thousand in monthly passive income from it now, which honestly is probably enough money for us to retire if we wanted to, without even doing anything else that we're doing, like with the businesses. So I think real estate is a perfect vehicle. It's recommended to a lot of people. So as both diversification, but as it's very unique with the passive income that it can generate you, unlike most stocks and bonds that grow in value, but you don't really get income from them on a monthly basis.
Yeah. You were forced into being a passive investor, passive real estate
Yeah,
investor. Let's just say you got out of the military and you were looking for a job or something like that. And that's when your parents passed away. Still, like, I don't want to be insensitive to that because,
right.
but walk through the scenario. Let's just say you're back home, you're living next door to the condo, your parents pass away. Now you have this piece of real estate. Do you think you would have walked into more of an active role then, or do you think you would have
It's
still
it's
gone
hard to
passive?
say. Honestly, if I was living in near the property, maybe I would have moved into it.
Yeah.
Frankly, if I was kind of renting at that time, and depending what my situation would have been, I might have decided, what, I'll just live here.
Yeah.
Instead of, and that I wouldn't have even became a landlord to begin with. Or yeah, like what you said, maybe I would have tried to rent it out myself and went through that headache, and maybe it would have turned me off from real estate altogether, because I can't stress enough how much I rely on property management. Our rental portfolio today is in 4 states. We have California, Alabama, Georgia, and Missouri, and it's multifamily properties. It's kind of it's a modest operation. I couldn't do this myself, and I would have never tried. And so very early in our real estate investing plans, even when we started buying our own property, I knew that no, we're using a property manager. I spent a lot of time, finding good property managers, and kind of working with them, and becoming comfortable with them. Because I think if you're into real estate for the income, if you'd like to build a portfolio of passive income, you absolutely need to approach this more as a business where you're the CEO, and not as like, I'm going to be there fixing toilets, or doing inspections. I don't think it's scalable that way. So uh, yeah, it's funny how things turn out. You ask me all these questions, and it's really is hard to say where you would have been, but it's interesting to look back and kind of see the both the mental and like the investing progression that you go through, and how random events that you didn't really expect push you to do things that maybe you wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah. Now you have a family now, right? So
Yeah.
how did you meet your wife? You're on a boat somewhere and you're serving our country, and how did you guys meet?
We're actually met on the ship, and she was my boss. It's
Oh, you
it's
married up.
it's a funny story. Yeah, she we met in Japan while we were both overseas deployed. So she was in the military as well. And yeah, they actually fired me at some point. It was like a little group of people that I was managing, and then she came in. They fired me. They put her in charge like the same week. It was a funny story. We laugh about it all the time.
So what rank? She outranked you,
Yeah, by one rank.
but
We're
still,
technically weren't even allowed to date when we were on the ship. It was like against the rules.
yeah. But now she outranks you. She outranks you then and outranks you now.
Yeah, I think she does.
Is
It's
she-
for life. It's for life now.
yeah. Does she make you salute her?
No,
No.
no, don't give her those ideas. I hope she doesn't listen to this
She,
recording.
I'll send this to her. All right. So as you're going through this process, what are her roles and responsibilities? Is she connected to the family business, or is this primarily your gig?
I would say that I'm probably the one that have spearheaded most of our investing and then the businesses, but I'm very happy that she's been super supportive.
Yeah.
We were really open with our conversations about money from the get-go, and I think that's very important in a relationship. So it's a situation where she's totally on board with what we're doing. She helps me with some stuff, and I definitely she's kind of my confidant where any investment decisions or even business decisions that she's not as involved in, I like to talk with her.
So I made a mistake one time of
Oh,
yeah, well, I've made a bunch of them, but here's one of them. I had a deal that I was working on and I told my wife about it and she's like, "We shouldn't do this." And I said, you know, we're doing
I'm gonna
it.
do it anyway.
Yeah, we're doing it. It wound up costing me a couple hundred grand. It burnt a little bit. Have you ever gone against your commander's suggestions, right? Like if you
I
brought a deal
think,
to her.
yeah, no, I think we've definitely had disagreements, but what I found is that I'm kind of introverted, believe it or not, and I like to kind of do the research, make my own decisions, right? I'm that kind of person. But it's even for a person like me, it's always good to, I feel like, talk to my wife, and I don't like to admit it, so but she's probably hearing me talk about this. But I do like talking to her because even though sometimes maybe she asks me questions that are not really even related to maybe the how I was making the decision, it kind of forces you to think in a different way. And maybe she brings something up that's not really super related, but that's for some other thought. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a good process, and I feel like it's been good to discuss stuff with her because sometimes I'm so focused on my line of thinking, what I think I should do, that I'm oblivious to certain things, or I just don't think about some scenarios. So I think it's a very healthy thing to discuss it with somebody. Maybe if if you're not married, you don't have a spouse, you have some close friend or other family members. Even if you're like a one type, one person show, like it's just me and I'm doing things. I think it's really good to just talk with somebody, get some feedback, have some like productive discussion, whether they agree with you or not. And maybe ultimately you do end up just disagreeing and still making the decision, which for us doesn't happen that often, but at least it kind of maybe gives me some more angles to think about or some things like to double check. So I really like that process.
Yeah. So as you're going ahead, right now building two software companies focused
Yeah.
in real estate and real estate investing, you have 40 properties making, you said about 10 to 12 in passive income every month just from the real estate, right? Give us an idea of how do you know you're winning, right? Like you're working really hard, you're building some cool stuff. You kind of have this mindset of the anti-startup and the hustle and grind and get funding for something that doesn't exist. Like, how do you know you're winning as a deal maker with you in what you're doing?
Well, I think kind of we talked about earlier about financial independence, right? And for me, that has always been the end goal, and kind of the ultimate goal is when you can build your life, build your investments or your businesses around the notion that I can wake up any day of the week, any day of the month, and I can literally do whatever I want and not worry about how I'm going to put food on the table, where I'm going to sleep. Like you don't worry about money. I think if you can get to that point, or if you're close to that point, or if you feel like you're well on your way to that point, that's when you're winning. And ultimately, with investing with real estate, that's why I've always focused on passive kind of approach to it, passive rental investing. So if we wanted right now, our rental property, our rental portfolio probably takes me like at most maybe an hour a month or something. And this is mainly just reviewing the statements, your monthly property management statements, maybe like handling some accounting stuff, just like some random tasks you can knock out like in an hour or two. So, if you can get to that point with real estate investing, I feel like you're financially free. Now, for some, maybe 12 to 15,000 a month isn't enough, right? So you just have to, I guess, grow your portfolio until you get to that level. But for us, with our current spending, we're fairly frugal. So we could be done, uh, potentially, and travel, see the world, work for nonprofits, go to school, just whatever you can. And I feel like that's always for us been the goal. That's where we want it to be. Is the same thing with our with my businesses, with DealCheck and Rentcast. I've spent a lot of work on them, my personal time, but it was kind of building the foundation that at a certain point, probably close, I probably could do it somewhat now. They're so automated that I could step away from their day-to-day operations, and they will continue making money with very little time invested. Now, with those, I kind of decided early on that I'll keep growing them for a couple more years, because I feel like they have some more potential to put in work with them and get more revenue out of the businesses, or even sell them eventually for a fairly substantial amount. So I keep doing it, and I also enjoy doing it. And I think that's also an important part, is if you uh, can get to a point where not only you're financially dependent, but during your financial independence kind of journey, you're actually fully enjoying what you're doing. You're not going to work just working for that paycheck, hating every minute of it, just dreading Monday, dreading every day of the week until the weekend, and doing the same thing all over again. You're actually like, I truly enjoy working on all of the aspects, our real estate, the businesses. I'm happy to wake up. Now I still want to get to a point, and we're pretty much almost there, where I don't have to do it if I didn't want to, but it pays. I think you're winning both ways, both when you enjoy exactly what you're doing, you're not dreading every day, whatever you're doing is making you great money, and you're working towards that goal of becoming financially free, to where if you don't want to do it, if you just want to mess around for a week, for a month, for a day, for as long as you want, all those investments or businesses that you have set up will continue running without you, and making you money and sustaining your lifestyle.
Now you work a lot. You built these two software companies. Before I ask you why did you build these, right? So you've got, your real estate portfolio, you're doing well there. You could, build more of that, but you chose to build two software companies. Before I ask you that, what kind of movies do you like? Do you have time for movies or TV shows?
uh a little bit, yeah.
Uh,
I'm not, I wouldn't say a lot.
All right. What's a movie or a TV show that if you and I are hanging out, we just did a big deal, we just sold one of your software companies, we
Hmm.
just had a big exit. Now we're gonna go chill, hang out with the family, turn on a show or a movie. What are we gonna watch?
Yeah, I'm pretty cliche. Like I was really big into Game of Thrones. We watched that until like the last couple seasons. Westworld is a recent one that I'm kind of into. That's a good show. Movies, I like all those superhero movies. Like I watched all the Marvel movies, and they were great. I loved Inception when it came out. That was
Yeah.
kind of more thought-provoking movie. So I don't think I have too crazy movie tastes.
Yeah.
Action movies, I could watch an action movie, superhero movie. Every now and then my wife be watching, TV, some shows, and I kind of glance over, but I do work a lot. You're absolutely right. And I don't, with these businesses, with real estate, I never want to like diminish. Sometimes I get on shows and people ask me like, "Oh, you're doing great. You only spend, an hour a month, and you get all this income, or your businesses are so automated." It was a tremendous amount of work getting there. And I don't ever want to kind of make people believe that it wasn't, that it's like easy money. And especially with real estate, a lot of people, I feel like, get into it, they think it's like almost like a get rich quick. They see all these people making $100,000 $1 million deals, making all this money. It's a very like get rich slow type, in my experience, type of investment. It requires work, research, kind of dedication, especially as you're growing your portfolio through like the first 10 properties or so. Your cash flow is little, and you do got to put in the work. And I guess maybe even from my Navy days, I've established kind of a pretty strong work ethic where I wasn't afraid of work. I can visualize a goal, see what work needs to be done, and just do it. I'm just gonna knock it out. I'm not gonna goof around, watch TV, do this stuff. Like I don't have a problem with just sitting down and really knocking something out. And I've always been super goal oriented. I have this spreadsheet. It's like very old school. I started it like 15 years ago, where I did this exercise. I read it in some book. I don't remember which one, but it was like visualize your ideal life. You probably heard of it. It's like a cliche type. So the exercise is just like take a piece of paper and visualize an ideal day in your life, just like where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, how much money you have, I don't know, what clothes you wear, anything, and like spend like a few days on it. Just random thoughts that come into your mind. So I actually did that. I did that. I just started writing different ideas down. And then the exercise continues. So like you spend about a week on this first part, and then the second part is you just take that random list of ideas that you wrote down, and you make your first list of goals out of it. Right? You kind of categorize them. You like group them together. Are they financial related? Are they relationship related? Physical and health related? Right? Just kind of group them in categories. So that's what I did, and nowadays I have like probably like a sheet with like 200 or something goals. It's a little crazy. They're big goals, small goals. They're broken down. It's like it's in this spreadsheet. There's probably like tools I can use for this, but I've been using this for so long, and I love it. I look at it every week. That's how I plan my weeks. That's how I plan my days. My like 6 month, 1 year like work cycles. It's I have these visions in different areas too, like physical fitness, relationships, not just financial and investing in business, the different ones. And that's kind of been my guiding light. So
Scale
uh
of 1 to 10 right now.
mhm.
How happy are you?
I'm probably up there like 8 or 9.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time in your deal career, like deal maker, right? So you're out of the Navy, you're starting to form your ideal life. You have a spreadsheet to prove it, right? You got tabs, you probably do
Yeah.
macros, you probably have cool formulas and conditional formatting where it's like green is
A
good.
little bit. I'm more of I do a lot of manual stuff. Probably should automate it.
All right. So if we look through your list over the past 15 years or after you got out of the military and you're
Right.
designing your ideal life, living it, have you ever seen a major dip in happiness?
I would actually say it didn't start so high. I would say for me, it's been more kind of a gradual increase if I was to graph it.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I had these goals and I was like happy about the goals. And then I more or less knew what I needed to do them, but it was a little daunting how much work that required, especially at the beginning. And I think that's probably the same with like any on a smaller scale, any undertaking. I like deal check or Ramcast. Like when you're just first visualizing something and you have this big goal, like I want to be financially independent, or I want to have, I don't know, $5 million in the bank. And then when you actually start breaking them down into smaller chunks and what I need to do together, it becomes a little daunting. And I would say that towards the beginning, when I was like, like pretty low on the completion for most of my goals,
Yeah.
I was a little stressed, and more in the sense that I guess you can say I was afraid of failure, or just afraid of that I wouldn't have the strength to finish all this work, because I realized the volume of work that needed to be
Mm.
done. And then as I was progressing through this, as I was getting closer and closer to some goals, accomplishing other goals, that really started boosting my both my self-confidence, self-esteem, and my happiness, because I was getting to a point where I'm like I could set pretty much any goal, and I could accomplish it. Like no matter how much work it required, I knew I could get it done. So when I started, and it took some years to get to that point. It takes time. I guess to convince yourself that you can do this, that you have the knowledge, the strength, the expertise to do it. So that's how happiness has been for me. It really kind of in the last few years it probably got more and more up there. But at the beginning, I think is the hardest part of any undertaking, any investment, probably anybody's life. I would guess. There's obviously things that could happen that you can't control, like people passing away and
Yeah.
and stuff. You'll need to setbacks that you need to deal with this, but as far as like things that require work from you, like investing or running a business or becoming successful, I feel like it's important to get yourself into a mindset where your self confidence is so high you really believe that you can accomplish anything through the setbacks, through the dips and ups.
So with the I really appreciate you sharing this. When when you looked at you broke down your whole life into an Excel cell, right? And you're looking at that and you're
Yeah,
going, "Oh my God, this is daunting. I need to do X per day, per minute, per second," right? You've
yeah.
got it calculated for the rest of your life. And like it could become, overwhelming, daunting, right? Especially as we're building out something that takes time. What advice? So you and I get to go back in time to the time where you started that Excel spreadsheet and you're starting to input it and you complete the form and you look at it and you go, "Holy moly, this is a mountain." Like what advice would you give yourself back then?
So the biggest thing I think that helped me that I didn't do from the beginning was break these big goals down to like as small chunks as you can, and only put like very actionable. So I do this thing now. So I have this my goal list, and then usually every Sunday before the week starts, I make like my weekly task list. Right. So in the past, I didn't really do this. So I would just kind of like maybe Monday or Tuesday, I would like open up my goal sheet and I'd be like, what should I work on? Like, I got to work on something, right? And it's like, it was a little vague. Some goals were like defined, some weren't, right? So it was like, I was a little all over the place. I didn't have as much focus. I was also kind of just working on these big chunks of tasks that weren't broken down, and it wasn't something I could do in a day or even in a week. So I would kind of just keep working on it, but I knew I'm making progress, but there wasn't like any record of the progress really. So what really helped me and what advice I would, I guess, give myself of what I do now is I do weekly goals, not weekly goals. I do weekly tasks, and those are very actionable things that I know I can accomplish that are pushing me towards accomplishing the bigger goals. So I have my big goals. I break them down almost to like little chunks of like a few hour tasks, maybe like a couple day tasks that I know I can do in a week, and that's what goes on like my weekly little task list. So when I wake up on Monday or any day of the week, it's easy because I see, hey, this is what I need to accomplish, and I knock them out. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. You know exactly what you should be doing. You're not like wasting time like trying to plan it or that
Mhm.
stuff. And it's taking you closer and closer to your goal. So then next weekend you review your kind of bigger goal list, and you're like, yep, I did these tasks for this goal, so that's done. I can put some more on next week. And it's like it's more mental than anything. I don't think every person needs to be this precise, I guess, and documented, but nowadays I'm in such like a good rhythm where it's like a process that works for me. I get a ton done in a week. I still set time aside for like free time. Like I don't feel like I'm always overwhelmed because as long as I get all my tasks done for the week, technically I'm off. It's like a mental thing. Like, hey, I get them done like by Thursday. Well, Friday, then maybe I can like goof around a little bit and maybe do some funner stuff or just some stuff that wasn't planned. So I both try to like limit my workload doing this because when you're like especially running your own stuff, it's really easy to just always work. And I was like that for a while, like nonstop, 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m.
Mm.
It's just there's always something you can be doing. So when I started doing this weekly task list, it actually both like structured my week and limited the amount of work that I actually do to some sane amount. Like because when you're an entrepreneur or like a solo founder, bootstrap, you got to keep your sanity. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with so much work, and it's endless. Like let me tell you, like it doesn't matter what you do, the work is endless. I think whether you work for somebody or you work for yourself or your own companies, there's
Mhm.
always more work.
Oh
and
yeah.
and you just gotta like And when I do this on a Sunday, it also helps me like, okay, what's really important? Like, what are the major things that are important that I should be working on, not filled with like garbage and just your medial tasks. So you focus, write down your stuff, then get it done. You can go play outside.
So with that said, I love this. Why did you build two software companies? Like, walk us through why you built those and what was going through your head, because that's extra work,
Yeah.
potential
So
assets too, right? But why?
Yeah, so there was definitely a financial aspect. I would say the first one. So I started with Deal Check, and that I started back in, I think, 2015 is when the first official Deal Check mobile app. It was just for mobile back then, launched. So I was into real estate investing, and I was investing actively myself, looking at properties, and I actually was looking for a software platform that I can use to analyze deals specifically on my phone. Like I was driving around open houses, looking at properties. I wanted a simple analysis calculator that I can use anywhere. I looked at a bunch of stuff. It was like either old or barely working. Just
Mhm.
just didn't like any of it. So I was like, there's got to be something that that is better than this. So really, without doing much market research or business plan or anything like that, I got this crazy idea. And this was also a few years after I got out of the Navy and I got into software development, like as my job, full-time job. So I was a young software developer, and it's always good to like have some experience, some personal project you work on your resume. And then I'm also investing in real estate, and I saw that there was kind of like what I thought was a gap in the market for a tool like this. So I was like, you know what, let me just like put some together on the weekends or in my off time, and if nothing else, I'll put on my resume, and next time I'm looking for a job, it'll help me get hired. So those were honestly like my major motivations. I never expected it to get big. I wasn't like, I'm gonna build in the next Tesla or whatever, next Zillow, like multi-billion-dollar company. And I did exactly that. I built the first version of Deal Check myself. It was a mobile app, and I launched it on the app stores, and then I shared it with just like a few investors I know, like friends, personal friends, like some people have bigger pockets. And I just remember that I was like floored with how much people loved it. People were like, "This is great." And back then, let me tell you, it was like pretty crappy. Like it was barely any features on this. It was like very basic, but people loved it, and that's. I also had that like aha moment, just kind of like how I did with the condo and owning it, and it opened up my eyes to real estate. I didn't even think about starting a business back then. It wasn't something that I was
Mm.
like really wanting to do, like actively looking for ideas. I mean, I knew about it. It was like cool if I have my own company because I was didn't want to work for somebody the whole time. So it was also like a something. I don't know if I was thrust into it this time, like with the real estate, but it was something that fairly happened like spontaneously. It wasn't planned. So that's how it first started, and then people loved it. I started just adding more features on the side as I was working full time, and over time I kind of established this method of just really focusing on customer feedback, building a product slowly. I wasn't focused on revenue at all because I had a job. We had our real estate. Like we weren't hurting for money. So I it wasn't really motivated by financial means, and that's what put me on that path of like not doing anything startup. Like I didn't really care what the growth was. I didn't really care how many new users or revenue we had. I just wanted to work on the product because I actually love doing that. I love building software.
Yeah.
So I love working on it, improving it, listening to people's feedback. And I can tell you that that's been the biggest like success to Deal Check. It's now one of the most popular property analysis platforms in North America with 200,000 plus users. I've never imagined it would get to this point.
How
And
many?
only like a few years ago, what was that?
How many?
200,000 active users, and
Wow.
it's real estate investing, so it's a pretty niche like space. So it's a good bit of market share, and it's a platform that only like a few years ago I realized like, man, this is getting pretty big, and that's when I kind of started getting a little more help other than working by myself, and adding some more automation and structure to it and all that stuff. But it really started as a hobby project that wasn't focused on doing the next like super crazy big idea, wasn't focused on any kind of marketing or meeting revenue targets. But I will tell you, it was profitable from day one because there was pretty much no cost, just some small infrastructure costs. I did the work. So I guess, I mean, there was a time-based, opportunity cost. But there was no, kind of investing. There was no loans. There was nothing. It was something that I built myself, and then over time, slowly but surely, I grew into a very profitable and successful business.
Yeah, you're doing absolutely incredible things. Like just just looking from the outside in. Now, let's go back to your spreadsheet. I like this. This is cool.
I know you can ask me to share, but I'm probably gonna draw the line right there. Let's put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So we're going to share your whole life's journey with
Yeah.
everybody. No, you even spelled out what kind of clothes you want to wear in the future for your ideal day. What, like, how long ago did you write this? The first time you filled out what clothes I want to wear as my future job.
Well, I don't think I have that goal. I'll be honest. The clothes are not on there. Now the spreadsheet is pretty detailed. And I started it. It would have to been, so I was still in the Navy, so it was about 15 years ago, I think. And yeah, and it all started from I was reading some book. It was a personal development book, and again, just don't recall the name, but I know I've seen this kind of exercise mentioned a
Yeah.
bunch of times. It's like your ideal life exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you went back, you're on the Navy boat, right? So you're wearing your Navy uniform,
Hmm.
and you had to say, my ideal life, every day I'll get to wear these kind of clothes. What would you have said if we asked your younger self while in the Navy?
I
Every day
think
I get
back
to wear
then it
these
would have been
clothes.
like something nice, I feel like. See,
Yeah.
I think back then I would have said like, man, like a nice like collared shirt, like maybe some nice slacks. But now I would say a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah.
Like hands down. Or maybe even pajama pants. Like
Now
yeah.
I can't see what you're wearing because we're just I see from are you wearing pants at
Yeah,
all? And are you wearing
I'm
pajama?
wearing pants. I'll admit they're pajama pants. I put a nice polo. Yeah, I saw some meme about this like a while ago, but yeah, I'm doing exactly that.
So you
I'm
have a
not.
nice polo shirt on with pajama pants
Yeah, because
bottoms.
I had to dress up a little bit for the podcast, but
Hey,
I'm
I'm
not
wearing
gonna
a
show my
sports
pants.
coat with no pants, so we'll just call it a
Yeah,
tie, right?
there you go.
So let me ask you a few more questions, right? So in this anti-startup like mindset, right? What is one golden nugget if the fellow deal makers, like people looking to build something for themselves, if there's one golden nugget that you want them to walk away with from this, what's that one thing that you want them to hear?
Well, I'll give you two nuggets. The first one,
Yeah, go for it.
the yeah, the first one I would say is instead of focusing on like the metrics like growth, users, revenue, focus on the product or the service you're delivering. Always and from the beginning. So with our software companies, it's obviously focusing on the actual software. I've met folks that do something very similar with educational and course materials. That they're educators. They have communities. Some people do content marketing. Some people even do the same approach with like service type businesses, believe it or not, that I've met. So, but the goal is to focus on your product and service. And it's not really that like cliche you hear like build it and they will come. Like it's marketing does play a part in this, right? I'm not going to diminish like how important marketing is, like probably down the line, but especially at the beginning, I would say the service and product you're delivering is the absolute number one. That is actually the thing you're selling. If you put a low level effort into it, like outsource it to some poor developers, or just put little effort and expect to make money on it probably won't turn out good. I mean, it might, I don't know, but that's always been our goal, and we've been very successful with this. And the second nugget I'll give you at the same time, I would say always be profitable from day one. And that's been it's harder to do in some businesses or some industries than others. Some have startup costs like equipment costs or building costs or stuff like that. But if you can, avoid. I just feel like startups are in that traditional startups are in that rat race. Like they get funding, they grow, they get so big, they run out of money, they need more money, they get more funding, and it's like yeah, eventually maybe they'll be profitable, or they'll be bankrupt. You're really going to go one or two ways with the startup. But there is a way, especially with our day and age, with so much automation, so much things you can outsource, like the infrastructure, so many things are cheap, websites, like just the basics you need for a business accounting, it's very cheap. So focusing on profitability on day one, it does two things. First of all, it'll force you to build in some sort of pricing into your MVP, right? A lot of people release products or websites or start doing stuff without even charging people.
Yeah.
Like Facebook got away with it, but it's a unique example, right?
Yeah.
And nowadays, if you're building something and there's no pricing, there's no product in there, you just want to attract users. Like, to me, that's that whole like startup cliche. Like, you just want to grow and we'll figure out revenue later, but
Yeah.
maybe there is no revenue later. I just think you're putting yourself in a very tough spot. But so you'll focus on profit from day one. You will bake in pricing into your product. You will actually be forced to sell it to people immediately, and you will immediately or within a few months know, like, is there demand for this service or not? If people are willing to pay you for this, like, early stage service or product that you have, that's a very good sign that there's a lot of potential here. And that gives you validation more than any research, any market analysis, any like guru can't. If you can build something or create something, or create a service or package a service and actually have people start paying you for it immediately, you're doing better than probably like 80-90% of startups or businesses out there. The funding, none of that really matters. Like, if you can't get people to give you money, to pay you for something, you really don't have a business, in my opinion. I'm sure some people like Elon Musk will disagree with me, but that's just my opinion. So those would be my two nuggets. Profit from day one, and um, focus on the product and the service.
Yeah, that's really cool. If you you're it's time to build another one, right? So
I don't know if
we're
I can
on
do it, but all right.
let's just say we did it together. We're
Good.
on real
All right, you'll
estate
help me out.
software or software company number 3. What should we build?
Ah, the $1 million question, right? But uh, I probably can't give you the answer you're looking for right now.
Okay.
Well, if I had to, yeah, I'll just throw it out there in case anybody is just curious. I've been in real estate and software so long. If I had to name like one biggest problem, right? This may not be, it may be need to be more niche than that, but it would be property data, specifically around like getting rid of the MLS. Anybody I talk to, any kind of a lot of developments that are happening, it's all about making property data, sales data, comparable data, like accessible much more widely than what the MLS does. So that's all really I'm going to say about that. I'll let you know if there's somebody listening, they want to explore this topic, you can shoot me an email, we can talk about it. But I would say that's probably the biggest kind of area that I see that there's so much room for potential, because it's almost like a closely guarded secret. It's like we're living in 1999, where it's hard to get the data. It shouldn't be this way. But what I really wanted to tell you, Josh, is that, so I feel like there's this whole notion of like, I got to find this perfect idea. Like, it's like that's where all the businesses starts. Like, the idea, I got to get that. Once I get the idea, it's over. I'm a millionaire. But I am more of the camp that ideas are, they're good. I wouldn't say they're worthless, but they're not even like half of the picture. I think that the execution and how you approach and build the service or product around the idea is much more important than the idea itself, right? Anybody can come up with an idea. I can go on any forum, on online website. There's probably thousands, tens of thousands of great, absolutely incredible ideas out there that nobody's doing anything with, either because it's hard, because they're lazy, because they don't understand how to create a problem or service in that idea, or in that kind of industry. So if people come to me and ask me like, how do I come up with idea? I don't have any ideas. Like, my kind of advice on that, or I guess some tips, is just look at your everyday life. Look at what industries or niches or just stuff that you're involved with. Like, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's music, maybe it's podcasts, maybe it's like microphone equipment. It just there's probably an area in your life that you're pretty familiar with, that you interact with on a daily basis at work or in your off time. And in that sphere that you understand well, try to look for common problems, questions people have, like gripes, like stuff like that. Like people are unhappy about something. It's incredible to me. Like I read about like crazy products that nobody really even thought of before, and all it came from is like just people complaining, like, you know what, I can't find like a good stand for my microphone, like these are like too like advanced, like these don't adjust, like, and then somebody comes around and then they just come up with like this perfect microphone stand because maybe they went through the issues yourself. Same with me, I was in the real estate. I wanted a product to analyze property, and I looked at products. I downloaded a bunch of them. I tried a bunch of them, and I was like, this is kind of crap. There's got to be something better. So I had a first like hand knowledge of both the problem and what solution that could be a good fit for this. And I think that just puts you in a much better position as opposed to you like picking some hot industry like marketing or social media and saying, you know what, I'm going to go build the next TikTok or Snapchat. I'm going to be a social, I'm going to be a marketer. I'm going to build a platform for marketers where you yourself have never done marketing. You have no idea about anything in marketing. I just think, yeah, you can do a business like that, but I just don't think it puts you in an advantage. There's already so many problems and obstacles you're going to have when starting and running a business. You might as well eliminate some of them, like actually knowing your target market and target audience.
So good, man. What nickname do do you have from maybe childhood, or like does your wife call you or something? Like
Just Anton.
just Anton. You're right.
Yeah,
I bet there's a nickname
it's
out there
just
for
it's
you.
just Anton, Josh.
All right. So Anton, we're running out of time. What question do you wish that I would have asked you, or that someone in the audience would ask you one day? Like you just love, whether it's business, personal, deals. What question do you wish someone would ask you?
Well, believe it or not, the goal one doesn't come up a lot. So I actually, that doesn't answer your question, I realize, but I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. I don't actually think I've ever discussed on any podcast or show about how I do my goals. I think maybe kind of related with that is like the whole mindset thing. And we did touch on that a little bit. It's easy to talk about like what you did and like how you've been successful with business and real estate, and people always ask you like, well, how'd you start your business, why'd you start it, how'd you grow it, what'd you do for marketing? Same with real estate, like what was your first property, like can you tell me what I should look for in my next property? Those are kind of like very implementation specific details, and they are important. But the mindset is like a topic nobody talks about a lot. So we kind of touched on my goals a little bit, and by mindset, I just mean like it's hard work, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
It's doing all this stuff is not easy. That's why you don't see just everybody having dozens of properties or running successful businesses. It's still fairly rare. And it does require a certain mindset, a certain like mental strength and ability to persevere and just keep working, even though you know how much work you got to do, and it kind of seems daunting. And I think it's important to just kind of work on personal development just as a person, however you approach that, whether that through reading like I do, maybe therapy, just maybe different, talking to other people if you're more on the social side, but just realizing that having a good mental state, putting your or working to put yourself in a good and healthy mental state is probably just as important as like the actual work you do on a daily basis. Because if you can't keep up, if this work breaks you, what was the point of it? Or if it ruins your health, your relationships, it was not going to be worth it. So just keep in mind that your mental state as an investor, as an entrepreneur, is just as important as anything you physically do with your hands.
So for fellow deal makers out there, they want to connect with you, maybe buy your software, maybe do a deal with you. What's a good way for them to connect with you?
Sure. So if you guys want to check out the software companies, you just go to dealcheck.io. And again, Dealcheck is the property analysis platform we have. It's also on mobile for iOS and Android. Just search for Dealcheck. And then Rentcast is just rentcast.io. And that's if you already have a portfolio, you're more interested in kind of tracking and optimizing and doing some market research. And my direct email is anton@rentcast.io. So if you just want to shoot me a note, you like the episode, you have questions, more than I'm not going to share the goal spreadsheet with you, but you can make your own. So anton@rentcast.io is my direct email.
Maybe, just maybe, Anton.
Just like the first 5 line, like the little
Yeah,
preview.
right. This is what I want to wear every day: pajamas with a collared shirt. I think
Yeah,
that's a
that's a
great
good
goal.
start.
It's a good goal. Anyways, Anton, thanks for coming on the show, man. Really enjoyed hearing about the mindset of a deal maker, the way you approach startups and building businesses and building things, how meticulous you are when it comes to your goals and planning out your life. Super impressive. Really glad. And once again, thank you for your service. Ladies and gentlemen listening in, always reach out to our guests, say thank you for being on the show, find a way to connect with them and do a deal with them. That's the mission and purpose of the show, is to put deals together and people together. And if you're working on a deal, want to chat about it, head on over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, and let's chat. Maybe you get on the show next. Till then, talk to you all next episode.